Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, regardless of where you are. It's always a good time to talk about Spiritism in lights of the gospel. Today, we're going to have Turri, who will about lives. Hi, Al. How are
Hey,
you?
hello. I see you got the memo about the red shirt. That's
I know,
awesome.
right? I know. I always I'm the kind of guy who always reads the memos. Hey, Al. So yeah, thanks for taking the time. And a lot of people know you, but for those who don't know you, so you're an active worker right now, Spiritist Movement, and you've been a speaker in several national symposia, including more than once in the Spiritist Conference of Georgia. So here from Georgia, we thank you for your help here at different occasions.
Well,
Also, on a regular basis, you're a speaker at the Peace and Knowledge Spiritist Center in Orlando, where you also teach classes on Spiritism 101, among other courses. And as a professional, you're a doctor, and you're the director of audiology for Vilages Health System in Orlando, Florida. And as always, take your opportunity to send your questions in the chat window, regardless of the social media platform that you're going to be using. And Al has reserved some time to address questions and comments towards the end after he concludes his presentation. Al, thanks again. And you've got the floor, sir.
thank you so much for having me. It's nice to see you again. And as I like to say, I can't take any credit for the content today. This content comes if we could put up the first slide. There we go. Perfect. All of the content that I'm going to share with you today came from these sources. The book Empty Lives, which was translated into English not too long ago. I think it was published just recently. I know it's new. It was new to me. Written by Divaldo, Franco, and Joanna de Angelis. There's a lot of content from the Gospel according to Spiritism, and there's a lot of slides in here that I can't take credit for. Some of the when we have presenters at the center, a lot of times they save their slides on the drive. And one day, a couple years ago, my flash drive broke and I couldn't recover the data. So I copied the folder where we put the lectures, and I have borrowed slides from anonymous people and also from other people known. In this case, Bernadette Leal, thank you for letting me borrow your slides. The goal today is to try to summarize this amazing book. It's about 30 or so chapters, 3 to 4 pages a chapter. It's a great daily reader if you're looking for something new to read. And my goal today is to summarize the overarching, or the main points, I should say, that I took away from reading the book. But again, the content is not my own. So next, let's start at the beginning, right? As we study Spiritism, right? We talk a lot about the codification and these wonderful books. Next, the book today, though, is one of the many books that have come after the codification. And what I always like to point out here with these books, as well as the codification, is the themes and the messages and the points universal, and not created or invented by Spiritism, simply codified by Allan Kardec for us and the spirits, and obviously books after that, again, universal themes from spirits that have gone before us, elevated and experienced, sharing their wisdom and knowledge of these universal truths that, again, not invented or created by Spiritism, but obviously expanded on and discussed a whole lot for our benefit. Next. So when we think about life, empty lives for that matter, I like to equate it to one life at a time versus our thoughts on reincarnation, right? And many lives. If we look at life as a one-time shot, right? It's very easy to think of it as a race. Um, who can make the most money, who can have the most prestige, who has the most followers on social media, who who has the best degrees, the nicest car, right? And that's, if we're only looking at life from one perspective, and then the goal is to win with the most, um that would make sense, right? And if we look at life as a race, it starts when we're born and it ends when we die. Next. Next. Oh, thank you. Um, when we look at life, this one life that we're living on a continuum, right? According to this law of reincarnation, um, and we look at this graph, every one of us, each one of us, right, created simple and lacking knowledge in the bottom left hand corner of this graph. We all started there. And as we live life after life and we evolve, um, we go from living empty lives to more fulfilled lives. And as we get better and better at that, where we come more and more from a place of love, less ties to the material and more ties to love, we evolve life after life to ultimately becoming a pure spirit. If we're here on earth, most of us are still down in that bottom third, right? We're imperfect spirits. We're working one life at a time to improve. And we'll talk more about this as we go. Next. So, what's the purpose of this incarnation, any incarnation for that matter? We're alive, we're in a body, we're connected to our spirit. And the primary purpose of this life, right, any life that we're in, is that God imposes it in order to bring us closer to perfection, right? For some of us, we're atoning for past wrongs. For some of us, it's a mission to help propel the world, right? Or a combination of both. If we're here on Earth, there's work to be done, obviously. Next. And each one of these lives, or the continuum, along the continuum of our eternal life, we face existential conflicts, right? If we're on Earth, right, our energy, our level of involvement at this point, um, we face continual challenges. Each of us have our own challenges. Each of us face them differently, but yet they're very similar. What we know is prior to this incarnation, we had a plan, we had a playbook, we had really good intentions, not solely for us, but for the whole group of us that plan to interact in this life together on our mission or on our need to atone, right? And if we face these challenges successfully, right, it leads to moral transformation. Now, let's say we had 5 main goals and 100 sub goals, right, for this life. Doesn't mean we're going to hit all of those necessarily successfully, but as we tackle each one of these little by little, life over life, um, we evolve morally. So as we face these challenges, these conflicts in each life, we're going to experience emotions that relate to the level of our consciousness at the time and our knowledge at the time. And as we experience these conflicts and suffer, if you will, it can either destroy us or rebuild it. And it all has to do with how we react and how we face it. Do we face it with negativity? Do we face it with a desire for revenge? Do we face it as if it's somebody else's fault or bad luck? Or do we see all of these challenges, regardless what it is, financial, health, um, relationships, vice or addiction, whatever it might be, are we experiencing these and facing these challenges from a point of view of an opportunity to grow or a reason to be mad and angered? Next. So, chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism tells us this, and I'll read this word for word. In most cases, men and women are the architects of their own troubles. Yet rather than admit this fact, they usually find it easier and less humiliating to their egos to blame their trouble on fate, God, bad luck, or even on an unlucky star. However, this unlucky star is actually no more than their own carelessness. And I like that word, carelessness. Remember, um, we reincarnated, right, into this life um, by the grace of God with no memory of our past wrongs. I don't think we'd want to know those things. I think it would impede a new beginning, perhaps. But what is with us in our conscience, right, are those universal laws. And here in this life, coming back at that similar level of consciousness, that similar level of moral development where we left off before, after healing and education and revitalization in the spirit world, coming back into this life with no knowledge of our past wrongs, but with a detailed plan of what we're going to do differently, what we're going to work on in this life. And through carelessness, right? It's very easy to get off track, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the material life again and get away from those universal truths. So that's why I like that word carelessness there. It's not always, not necessarily intentional. It's just careless. We take our eye off the prize, as they say, right? Next. And what they tell us here in chapter 5 is carelessness can lead to the loss of contact with our inner self, right? With that connection to our spirit, with that remembrance or that belief in evolving and growing, right? To that Christ-like perfection, like we saw in that graph, to a pure spirit. It we exert, I should say I exert, I can't speak for all of us, but I do think most of us exert a lot of effort pleasing our ego, meeting the demands of our ego. I like to, I can't tell you who taught me this, but I didn't create this acronym, but I love ego. If you break it down into EGO, I call it edging God out, right? The more we come from our ego, the more we come from our pride, our decisions, our thoughts, our words, our actions, from our ego, as opposed to love and a place of God, we're edging God out of the picture. You can't come from a place of love when you're edging God out and when you're doing things to satisfy your ego. And that includes, seeking the opinions of others. You want their applause. I have 3 teenage daughters, and we were talking the other day about a post or something they saw, I forget, on Snapchat or whatever these platforms are called. And the conversation was, oh, I got 86 likes, or I got 15 likes, or nobody liked my thing, or nobody shared, right? And that's a classic example, right, of a modern day representation of seeking the opinions of others and their applause. Are we living life for the likeness of others, for the appeal of others, for their gratification towards us, right? For our ego, like, oh, I got 86 million followers. Well, I don't, but maybe you do, right? And is that important, right? Well, in a material life, in that race of life, absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, if we're living our life simply for the gratification that we receive from others liking us and looking up to us and following what we say, and we're driven by this ego of ours or our pride, we're definitely in that empty life category. Ultimately, it results in an unconscious hostility and emptiness where nothing is ever enough, and you're constantly chasing the next applaud, if you will, right? I always equate that to a hamster in a wheel, right? Just they run and they run and they run and they run and they just spin and spin and spin. Next, please. And this is what happens in that scenario, right? Whatever your focus is, you show me what you think about, what you talk about. Ultimately, that turns into the actions and the people you pursue and hang out with, right? So if we're truly focused on a material life, right, we'll never have enough money. We'll never be beautiful enough. We'll never have enough power. If that's our focus, if that's our desire, if that's our dream, right, if that's our goal, we've definitely gotten careless about our primary objective as an eternal spirit, right, which is to evolve in a Christ-like manner, right, to evolve to a pure spirit. And that takes a whole different set of goals, right? It's not a material focus at all. And no judgment here, right? I'm guilty of this definitely for the last, maybe for the last, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years. Little by little, I'm moving away from this, but I'm still hung up on some of this stuff, not nearly as much as, in my 20s and my 30s, but these are still everyday issues, existential conflicts, as we talked about. And my goal, day by day, is to become less and less tied to these things. Next. And to do that, I've got to change my focus, right? We need to change our focus, right? Find the best perspective, right? And sometimes it's, upside down and on your head, right? Sometimes it's different angles. The point is, life's a matter of perspective, and we have to find the best angle. For me, right, the best angle is Christ, and we'll talk more about tools and things we can do, right? But if I'm constantly focused on my bank account, on my business, on the car I drive, or the like or the gratitude of the other people on Facebook or whatever it might be, I've got to change my perspective, because I'm never going to grow morally. I shouldn't say never, but it's definitely going to be a lot longer road. Next. So as we change our perspective, right, and we look within, right, we gain self-awareness. What does that do, right? That enlarges our emotional horizons when we're truly trying to know ourselves. It definitely enlarges those emotional horizons, and it allows us to change perspective. We see the world from a whole different place. The Al Turri of 2024 sees the world and the people in it very differently than the Al from 2014 or 2004 or 1994. Very, very different. Why? Well, fortunately for me, I was introduced to a lot of neat concepts. Didn't know what it was called, but pieces here, pieces there. And then my wife, when I met her, was kind enough to ask me what I believed, and I explained it to her. And she said, "You're a spiritist," and she gave me a copy of the Spirit's book and Nasalar. And as a result of that, and that's almost 20 years ago, as a result of looking within and wanting to grow, getting back to that original goal. And I still don't know what my goal was when before I was reincarnated. That's still unknown to me. But the tools that we have, the codification, these wonderful books, the Spiritist Center lectures that I go to, these national conventions that I attend, there's so many tools for me to continue changing my perspective. So I'm looking at the world completely differently. I'm living completely differently today than I was just a few years ago. Obviously, I'm still in that third order. I'm still imperfect. I still have so much work to do, but I'm moving in the right direction. And as I do that, right, as we do that, we can focus and resolve some of those existential conflicts. By no means am I suggesting that we're going to die in this life and become a pure spirit in the next life. But the progress I make, right, incremental, each life after life, is totally attainable and totally doable, right? The question is how many and how much suffering, right? The more I can focus each life on these universal truths and living more Christ-like, the better life is, the less empty it's going to be. Next. So, um, let's present this. We'll go from left to right. Let's start in the middle, actually. All right. We know that we all face challenges, very, very unique in some cases, but all very similar, right? We have many of the same needs, and we have the same goals in a big picture kind of way, but we're all going to face them uniquely. So these challenges, right? The recommendation here is move away from the negative tendencies. If we stop, and I cannot tell you who said this. I know my friend Peter Roman presented this in a lecture many years ago, and I want to say it was St. Francis, but it could have been someone else. So I apologize for not having the reference. But getting away from your negative tendencies, what was recommended here is at the end of the day, as you lay your head on the pillow, relive your day and the actions and the thoughts and the words that you used, right, and your interactions with people. Reflect briefly on things you could have done better. Pray, meditate, wake up the next morning with gratitude for another day to work on those things, right? So that's the first thing. Identify your challenges on a daily basis and move away from those negative tendencies. I had a lot of negative tendencies in my life. I still have some, right? But little by little, they're going away. So I'm very pleased with that. Um, as we identify and move away from these negative tendencies, we really start to know ourselves, and we stop empowering the problem, right? If we can identify the tendencies, truly know thyself in the sense of hey, okay, these are the things I'm doing that I don't want to do. I'm going to move away from them and I'm going to do it like this. We stop empowering the problem and reducing the repetition. And a big part of that is focusing on the positive, right? Little by little, it takes a long time to change habits, but little by little, one thing at a time, habits can be changed. And you can focus on the positives. It's contagious, I think. And then the important piece here on the left, right, the bottom left, we have no control over the situation, but we have control over how we react. Do you slam the door when faced with challenges and run away? Do you see no hope? Do you have no trust um, in positive outcomes, or are you on the other extreme where everything's rainbows and sunshine, or unicorns, as they say, right? I think most of us fall somewhere in between. I'm definitely a rainbow and unicorn kind of guy. You show me any situation and I'm usually seeing something positive in it most of the time. Are there times when I'm completely opposite? Absolutely. The point is, regardless of where we fall in this continuum, right, of reaction, we can choose to move the needle. We can become more positive. We can go more negative, right? It's up to us. It's a choice. We can control our reaction to any situation, right? We're in control of that, and all of these things create opportunities. I was listening to a podcast recently, and again, I'm terrible with references, but the gentleman was responsible for Target's evolution from more of a Kmart type store to more of a when they started calling him Target, right? He was also the person responsible for the model and the development of the Apple Store, right? And I forget his name. And he's a very interesting guy. He's also he's very anchored in his faith. He calls this, right, securing the good. So to quote him, right, these opportunities we face every day. What is our motive? What is our goal, actually, I should say? Are we going to try to secure the good for everybody involved? Or are we going to perpetuate the negative? I choose most of the time to try to secure the good, but it's so easy to get hung up on negativity, especially in dynamic relationships, right? In the workplace, at home. We all have triggers. We all have buttons that can be pushed. We all have history with individuals. Um, and I'm so guilty of being pessimistic in some of those situations. No matter what I do, I can't fix something. And that can get me down and make me negative. But for the most part, I'm striving to secure the good in my interactions. Next. So how do we do this? How do we secure the good? How do we turn lemons into lemonade? Well, let's start with prayer. All right. We can pray anytime, anywhere, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be on your knees and starting with "Dear God," right? It can be a simple conversation in the car where you're stuck in traffic. It can be in the middle of a difficult situation where you stop and you put God in your heart and you ask for help or direction or simply a pause to connect during trying situations. Then there's meditation, and I kind of equate. I know they're different, but I tend to meditate with prayer. Um, but they are both wonderful tools. As we do more of this throughout the day, we have the ability to gain harmony. Harmony of that difficult challenges, those existential conflicts, and our reaction to them. We can have a harmonious relationship with challenges. And ultimately, optimism can be created or developed more readily as we find harmony and as we utilize prayer and meditation. Next. So, going back to empty lives and the essential objective of human life, right? It's to allow the human being to develop all of its dormant potential. What does that mean? Dormant potential. Each of us, right? You, me, everybody. What are we at the end of the day? At our core, we're eternal spirits created by God, right? Lifetimes ago, all at the same starting point, simple, lacking knowledge, life after life, growing, evolving. And here we are. How many billions of people now? Are we over 8? Are we at 9 yet in the world, right? Every one of those lives, right? Living their life right now, started in the same place, and they're all going to the same place, right? What is that? Evolvement as a pure spirit. Our dormant potential, right, is that stuff within us that's limiting us from evolving. We all are promised perfection, Christ-like perfection, right? But how easy is it to drift away from that, to get careless, right? To quote the chapter 5 of the gospel, right? If we can remember this, right, and we achieve this, it makes individuals like us, right? It helps us make choices from a place of love as opposed to being driven by our ego and our pride. And again, if we're here on earth, we are definitely tied to materialism more than we are tied to love. For most of us, there are exceptions. So the goal of each of my life, right, and what I try to strive for is coming from a place of love as often as possible. And I fail miserably every day. But over decades of my life, as I explained, I can see less failure in that regard because of situations like this, opportunities to learn and share with you, opportunities to interact with friends and family, applying concepts of these universal truths that I've learned through Spiritism. Next, and I think it's important to say, right, that the process, this is also from the gospel. The process isn't automatic, right? Are there instinctual aspects of being human? Absolutely, right? But this process of evolving morally is not instinctful. If all we did was worry about shelter, food, preservation of life, and continuation of the species, right, through procreation, those kinds of things are definitely instinctual. But choosing to come from a place of love, right? Choosing not to come from a place of ego, choosing not to be spiteful, choosing not to be revengeful, choosing not to take an eye for an eye, right? Choosing to turn the other cheek. It requires a choice, a lucid thought, right? Having a desire, right, to be better, having a desire to love one another, right? We have to make an effort, right? And these don't happen in one lifetime. They don't happen in one day. They don't happen necessarily in a decade, in huge swings, right? But life after life, right? They string together. And before you know it, we're at a completely different level of evolvement than we were. Next. And I like to use this slide frequently, right? It's cause and effect. I am living the consequences of every choice, every reaction, every thought, word, and action that I've ever made up until this point. I am here today because of choices and actions I took previously, as are you. There's no escaping this. And at this very moment, I am creating the next effect, right? What's going to happen next? I'm creating my reality, right? I can't control all the situations, but I can control my reaction to them, as can you. And as a result, day after day, week after week, life after life, we evolve at the pace of our actions. Next. So when we acquire self-awareness, right, we're going to be better able to identify where we are in this process, right? And the impact of the ego. Don't spend a lot of time on this, but think about choices in the past that went wrong, right? How much of that was driven by your ego? Maybe a desire to be right, maybe a desire to prove somebody wrong, maybe a desire to get ahead, right? A desire to hurt someone before they hurt you, right? Think about that, right? And the more we can identify the impact of making choices from our ego, the better we're going to be at connecting better to God, to coming from a place of love. reacting less from our ego and our pride and more from a place of love, which is going to help us fill up some of those empty spaces in life. It's going to help us give in less to contempt, self-abandonment, and that emptiness. How many of us, myself included, feel like that hamster on a wheel frequently, right? Enough, never enough, never enough, never enough. I want more, I want more, I want more, right? Well, that's an existential emptiness. And for me, it's driven by being tied to my ego and my pride and less to love. Next. So, along this journey and this process, the recommendation in the gospel is mental communion, right? Mental communion right through prayer, through meditation, through charity, right? Through helping others, right? It helps us identify benevolent entities. It helps us draw benevolent entities towards us. If I'm hanging out uh, with and doing not so cool things, and it's funny in my house. The TV is a big deal. I used to love, I don't know, Rambo, Star Wars, uh, war movies, right? All kinds of crime thrillers, right? Um, and my wife um, is really helped me understand this concept, and actually not necessarily a scientific experiment, but just anecdotally in my own life. As I watch less and less TV, right? Because I was gonna say we're gonna talk about if I'm hanging out in bars, if I'm hanging out with doing stealing or being greedy. A lot of that stuff I've moved away from. Well, I was never a thief. Sorry, forgive me. Don't want you to think that. But my point is, the life I'm living now, the big things I'm still trying to overcome our thoughts, right? And connecting with positivity or negativity. And I've gone from I'm pretty much off of all social media except for LinkedIn and a couple groups on Facebook that I need to be on for professional things. But I've gotten away from that and television now. I'm still guilty of it. There's still I get caught up on Netflix at times with some of these shows. But it's funny when my wife is home and when we sit down to watch something together, or I'm watching something and she enters the room, I change the channel, right? Because I already know that she doesn't want to connect to that, and I know that I'm connecting to lower energy. And sure enough, over years of experimenting with this, when I watch more uplifting things or when I stay off social media, I'm definitely better able to connect because I'm drawing more positive energy to me. I hope that makes sense. The other thing that's helped me in this regard is starting my day daily with some readers. I read a different spiritist book, a couple pages at a time every day. So it takes me probably 15-20 minutes. I also have a couple devotionals that aren't spiritist based, but they're Christian based or they're self-help based. And I listened to an app with a couple friends of mine. It's called Through the Word. It's basically the Bible, one day at a time, one chapter at a time, where there's a person sharing their thoughts. Then they read the chapter to you, and then you can leave a 3-minute audio for the friends in your group, and you talk about whatever the chapter was that day. So that's how I start my day. If there's any tech folks out there in the Spiritist community, I would love to talk to you about developing a Through the Word type app um, with a Spiritist focus. Because don't get me wrong, Through the Word is awesome, but um, it's definitely I would prefer it to be more spiritist based. And I won't take us off topic anymore, but if there's any techies out there that know how to do this kind of stuff, I'd love to talk to you. So the point is, I start my day, and the recommendation from the gospel, right, is we should start our day with mental communion, right? Um, as we do this, we start off and throughout the day connecting, right? It's going to inspire decisions and healthy behavior, which obviously is going to enrich our well being. It's going to have us surrounded by positive energy. It's going to have us better able to tap into intuition, to guidance from our guardians. It's going to make better choices. I like to equate it to those cartoons where you have a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And throughout the day, I can listen to this guy or I can listen to this guy, right? And the better I've connected to positivity, the more likely I am to listen to the good guy. Next. All right. So, as we make those connections, as we make those choices, we definitely are going to have this moral evolvement. It's going to be slow in most cases. It's going to happen over time, over lifetimes. But see the little victories, right? Our triumphs over conflicts. I'm sure each of you can look back as you've progressed and identify triumphs, things you've done that you've moved in the right direction. So celebrate those for sure. Don't focus on the negatives, right? It's okay to be aware of the negatives. It's okay to identify weaknesses. Focus though on the triumphs, all right? Find triumph and success and then emulate that one conflict at a time. Um, the this is all in reach for all of us. We all have this ability. We can all do what they call acts of a noble nature, right? And for those of us that make an effort to achieve them, right? It's all doable. And as we do this, we grow. Each act well done offers the reward of success that follows. That's cause and effect, like I mentioned earlier, right? Every moment that we are striving for good, that we are doing good, leads to that involvement. Next. So how do we do this, right? Through education, obviously. And Spiritism is just a wonderful codification, a wonderful base. I call it a three-legged stool, right? And you need all three legs, right? There's a religious aspect, a science aspect, and a philosophy aspect, right? And it basically starts with, the question, why are we here on earth, right? And ultimately, as we study this, there's no question. We're here on earth to love, all right? And here's a quote from the Spirit of Truth, right? Spiritists, love one another. That is the first precept. Educate yourselves is the second. So start with love, right? Trying to be less and less tied to your ego, right? And pride, tied more and more to the love of others, right? For others. And get better at that by educating yourselves. And this starts, I think, or continues, right? This education with understanding the challenges of life, those existential conflicts that we all face. We're going to face those in the physical world, right? We're going to face challenges along this immortality of the soul, right? These bigger things, right? Um, Obviously, educating ourselves on reincarnation, understanding the benefits of it, the responsibilities of it, and ultimately the communication and connection that we have with the spirit world. Educating ourselves on all of these are going to help educate us and help us strive more and more to understanding that our true mission here on earth is to love. Next. So on the path to perfection, right, that moral evolvement to a pure spirit, we have to remember we're still imperfect, all of us. If we're on earth, we're still in that imperfect stage. I like how they equate it here to our spiritual childhood. And ultimately, just like kids, right, our mistakes represent a lack of learning. I continue to come from a place of my ego and my pride because I just have not learned enough. I'm not studying enough. I'm not growing enough. The beauty, though, is is I have the ability to learn, right? And we all get better. We all evolve, right, and get away from this imperfect state over time because we learn not to repeat the same error again, right? We constantly are repeating lessons, right? I came into this life with a bunch of goals and things to work on, a task list, if you will, right? And each day I'm living it, and little by little, I'm going to work on those things, right? It's inevitable. I've got to work on them. I can do it slowly. I can do it quickly. And the best way to cover all those bases is to follow the example of Christ and to do our best to live like he did. And as I continue to educate myself, I will continue to improve. It's there for all of us. Next. So next time we find ourselves, like this guy, wanting less suffering, more fulfillment, right? We've got to, let's break this up into short term. This one life. Remember the picture of the racetrack in the beginning, right? Um, Short term, one lifetime, right? Long term fulfillment, um, from the sense of life after life, of moral development, by moving away from pride and ego to a place of love, for our fellow spirits and for mankind. Next. So if you look at this, right, you've got short term and long term. If we look at the short term first, or let's do them side by side. If we're focused just on this life, right, if we're tied to ego and pride, if that's our primary driver, outside in, right, we're being influenced and directed by outside influences, all the things that come at us, right. When we think long term, right, we are controlling our reaction to short term pressures, short term challenges, and we're considering more and more, um, consistently, what is the impact of my reaction, of my activity in this endeavor on my spirit, on my soul, right? If we're thinking short term, these external factors, right, again, are driving us, as opposed to that internal spirit of mine, that consciousness that I was given, the laws, the universal laws that are here with me. I know right from wrong. This is not. It's not. I can't claim ignorance, and the more I study, the more I learn. Right, I'm controlling my reaction to things based on my knowledge of that. Short term, again, it's all about ego. I got a better car than you. My bank account's bigger than you, right? Look at all my followers on Twitter, or what is it, X now, I think. The point is, when we're driven by ego, we're really thinking short term. We're thinking about this life. When we are driven by spirit, right, and the growth of our spirit and evolving to that pure spirit, that is there for all of us, then we're thinking long term. Short term, it's selfish. Me, right? What can I do to get ahead? Long term, selflessness, like Christ showed us, right? Um, Regardless of where people stand on Christ, right? Whether you're an atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Jew, um, uh, Christian, right? Wherever you stand, right, on a religious aspect, um, no one, I believe, could deny that if the world, if everybody lived like Christ lived, not tying this to religion at all, just his actions, the way he thought, the way he talked, and the actions he made. Wow, wouldn't the world be a better place, right? Because we would all be selfless. We would not be selfish. And then obviously, short term and long term again. The goal for each of us should be, um, long term. And if we focus on the long game, right, the evolvement of our spirit, the short term choices become easier and easier. I shouldn't say easy, right? But we're less careless, right? To quote the text earlier today, we're less careless because we're thinking about not just the race of this life, but the continuum of life after life. Next, please. And I think the best way to educate ourselves and to do this is to emulate, the life of Christ. We are so blessed, to have his teachings with us to this day. Not only his teachings, but, more clarification on some of on his parables, right? From evolved spirits that have, shared their knowledge with us. I love heaven and hell. It's you ever want to read, about, existential conflicts and, the time, of overcoming, this being tied to material life, right? That's a great read. As is Existential Conflicts, Joanna de Angelis. Great book, for this. And it all comes down, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is following the example of Christ. If we can emulate his thoughts, his words, his actions more and more on a daily basis, that's the best teacher of all, the best direction, the best example. Easier said than done, obviously. Next. And I'll leave you today, with, with this from Joanna de Angelis. All right. If you feel sad and tired of your day-to-day troubles, wrestling with all sorts of sorrows, try loving. If your load seems too heavy to bear when you feel lonely within a crowd, when you are beaten by adversity and it seems as if you were entangled in a hopeless maze of insanity, try loving. If you are in the verge of despair, feeling weak and lost, try loving. Whatever the circumstances, no matter how difficult the situation that confronts you, try loving. Spread love like a fertilizing pollen made of light, and love will fly back to you as peace and spiritual beauty. Never return evil for evil. Instead, do unto others as you wish others to do unto you. If you do so, you will realize that loving your neighbor is really the golden rule, the perfect solution for all human problems. Always try loving and continue loving until love becomes an inherent part of yourself. So, with that, I'm going to just simply commit to trying to secure the good more and more on a daily basis. I want to thank our hosts for the opportunity to serve today, and love to thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate you. Thank you for helping me on my journey.
Oh, thank you very much. That was very inspiring. Oh, I have good news for you. This recording is going to be available on Facebook and on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get more than 15 likes. At any rate, so we have some questions and comments to share with you. I'd like to get your insights, but before we get there, save the date for the 18th Spiritist Symposium, which is going to happen on November 21st in Boston, Massachusetts. The theme is Life Through the Lens of Immortality, Philosophy of Spiritism. The U.S. Spiritist Federation is offering a new virtual course, which is Introduction to Mediumship, which is a free course for beginners. And it is everybody's invited to it, and to explore the realm of Spiritist communications according to Spiritism. So you can check the course at learn.spiritist.us, or you can scan the QR code that is available on the screen. Speaking of training, also there's a podcast-like series, which is called Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, which is based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. A new episode is available every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is available on both YouTube and on Spotify. And also there's the Spiritist app, Be My Hope, which is available now on the App Store or Google Play. And the app offers uplifting content in a collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. So you can download it now. And if you want to help the U.S. Spiritist Federation, there's also QR codes. Yeah, there was a QR code if you want to help the Spiritist Federation. Yeah, this is back there. So if you want to help, with all the and U.S. Spiritist Federation helps your support, that will help them continue to provide content like this, translated material, and work in different platforms. All right, now let's go to the Q&A.
Absolutely.
So, what do you call empty lives? Some people call it's all that exists, and are happy to focus only on their material needs. Is there anything we can say to these people that can be of help to them?
Wow. I first, I think as we pray for our own involvement, I think praying for others on their journey as well. I always feel like the best thing I can do to help others on their journey, I think, is just try to be a good example. I'm not one to, and again, this is my opinion. There may be other answers to this. I'm just not much of a proselytizer or a finger pointer. I think just living my life, sharing my beliefs, and really trying to live by the golden rule can help others. But as far as changing people, I think I can influence people a little bit, but I don't think I can change them. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
How to balance, this is from the US Spiritist Federation, how to balance our professional and intellectual ambitions with our efforts to evolve morally.
Yeah, I think the best answer for that is to conduct your professional and intellectual ambitions like Jesus conducted his business, right? Um, um, I'm in business. I manage a pretty large team, and over the years, what I found is if I'm coming from a place of money, a place of greed, a place of we're the best, right? Um, doesn't work. I mean, there's only so much that works. So, um, I believe that trying to find win-win, right? Win-win for not just me and the business, but win-win for the patient, right? For the customer, win-win for the employee. Um, and I think that's what Christ would I think that's what he showed us. So that's my 2 cents on that. If you're coming from business or professional ambitions from a perspective of I'm going to be the best, I'm going to be the best person that does this, I'm going to win. I don't care what I have to do to succeed. Um, then that's not so good. But if we're coming from our ambitions from a point of love for our fellow man, and securing the good, as that gentleman said in the podcast, I think that's the best way to look at it. What can I do to help everybody and succeed in that sense?
Thank you. What to do when people do not recognize our efforts to do what's right?
Yeah, I check my ego a lot, right? How often do I say, man, they didn't even realize what I did. Nobody even saw that. Nobody cares. Um, So, what to do? I think one, right, to recognize that I'm not here for their applause or for their gratitude for me, right? I'm here to exemplify as much as I can what Christ taught us. I'm doing good as much as possible, and again, this is almost figuratively, right? Because I'm still imperfect. I still get caught up in this, but my goal every day when these things happen is to remember that I'm not here to please them. I'm here to please God, and I'm here to grow. Um, and if I can stay centered in that and away from my ego, the actions of others don't really bother me. Have I gotten there? Absolutely not. I still suffer from this to less of a degree than I did. But I think the idea here is, hey, they didn't recognize it. That's okay. I'm not here for them. I'm here. I'm here to please God, and I'm here to be a follower of the way, right? Follower of Christ. Um, and that's how I look at it.
Thank you. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the last one, last question for you, unless another one comes up. What can we do if we are trying these spiritual paths but still feel anxiety and emptiness?
That's a great question. Wow. Well, I think just in the text that we looked at today, we can try to connect more, right? We can pray more. We can try to get that connection more fervently throughout the day. Um, when we're feeling anxious or empty, be aware of it, right? And if we're aware of it, just like we showed in that slide, that creates the opportunity to, now you have identified it, focus on the positive, the things that are going right, and then little by little move away from this. And when all else fails, listen, there's nothing wrong with getting help, right? Finding somebody to talk to. I think we all have confidants in our life. We can all seek. I mean, depression, anxiety, it's no joke. I mean, if we're really getting caught up in this, and more anxious and more empty, I don't think there's ever anything wrong with finding professional help for that too. It's always good to talk to somebody.
Excellent. Thank you. We do have another question popped up from Luciani Serri. Having three teens in your household and with your experience, how do you help them going through the social media pressure? What would be like the main point of conversation?
Wow. I first let me state that I've failed miserably in this regard. I'm learning from my mistakes. I just looking back on, I mean, my oldest is 16 and the about to be 17. The twins are 15, about to be 16, and I feel inadequate a lot of times. My biggest wish is that I had limited access until later. Um, it's just so part of their life. COVID really, I mean, the only connection they had was online. So to answer your question, though, the main point of my conversation, our conversation with the girls, um, is really focused on their perspective of themselves, trying to remind them and show them that what's happening out there on social media is out there on social media. It's not necessarily their reality. Um, if people are bullying them online, I remind them about how wrong that is and how their words don't change the fact of who they are. And then I think most importantly, I try to make sure they understand that that's to me not necessarily reality. It's an important part of their life, but try to always point them back to the center, right? Of 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 what's important, which is them, regardless of what happens out there, to love their neighbor, to love themselves, and to still treat others. Like, don't get caught up in it. Don't get negative on social media. Don't post. Remember, anything that you post is permanent. Um, Anything that you put out there is it can be damaging to yourself and to others. So whatever you post, just like we've taught you to speak well, to talk nicely, to love your neighbor, have the same process online. And if people are not acting that way online, and you're receiving this or reading this, remember that's not the way we want to live, and try not to let that impact you. And again, I've failed miserably, so I'm sure there's better advice out there, but that's where we are now with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Al. That was our last question for today. And for also thank for everyone who watched today's talk live and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Next Saturday, August 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss out the next live, which is going to be offered by Rafael Rezende. And he'll be discussing planetary transitions and the cosmic cycles. So stay tuned for our next live. Al, before we close the live, would you be so kind to say the final prayer for us?
Yeah, certainly. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be alive today, to be gifted with another day, with the responsibility of free will, with the ability to connect to our mentors, with the ability to study and to learn, and to follow the example of Christ. As always, Father, we thank you for that. We pray for strength and courage along our journey as we face challenges that come our way. And we simply pray for the ability to stop and think and let ourselves react like Christ would with any adversity that faces us. So be it.
So be it.